26th of 2018, this defendant shot and killed two of his friends. He killed Christopher Thomas and Anthony Williams.
New footage of YNW Melly inside Broward County Jail is going viral, nearly 2,500 days into his incarceration without a conviction, and it's forcing everyone to re-examine a case that refuses to die. Let's rewind to the early morning of October 26, 2018. A gray Jeep Compass sped through South Florida with four members of the tight-knit YNW collective from Gifford, Florida. Jamel, YNW Melly Demons, his associate Cortland, YNW Bortland Henry, and their childhood friends Anthony, YNW Sackchaser Williams, and Christopher, YNW Juvie Thomas Jr. By sunrise, Williams and Thomas were dead, shot multiple times. Prosecutors allege a calculated betrayal that Melly, seated in the rear driver's side seat, opened fire on his two friends inside the Jeep. They further claim Melly and Bortland then staged the scene to look like a random drive-by, driving to a dark, isolated stretch near a recycling facility and firing additional rounds from outside the vehicle before Bortland delivered the bodies to Memorial Miramar Hospital around 4:35 a.m., reporting a drive-by. Investigators say the drive-by account fell apart immediately.
You know, he obviously went to trial before that ended in a mistrial, and he's remained in custody since that. And he has a right to a speedy trial, a constitutional right to a speedy trial.
A mile-long search of Miramar Parkway turned up no shell casings, broken glass, impact marks, or tire evidence. Surveillance video showed four people, not two, leaving the studio with Melly visible in the rear driver's side seat. Forensic analysis later concluded the fatal trajectories originated from inside the Jeep, consistent with shots fired from the rear driver's side toward the passenger side. Medical examiners reported stippling on one victim, unburnt gunpowder consistent with close-range fire. Prosecutors also cite a purported Instagram exchange hours after the shootings in which Melly allegedly replied, "I did that." And yet the case is far from simple.
What would they look for? Shell casings, glass fragments, projectiles, tire marks. You're going to hear that there is none of that found whatsoever.
Despite cell site data, forensics, and the alleged DM, Melly's 2023 trial ended in a hung jury, reportedly 9-3 against conviction on the top charges. He has now spent over 2,400 days, nearly 7 years, in pretrial custody. The retrial, once penciled in for September 2025, is pushed to January 2027 amid ongoing fights over what evidence jurors can see. Then came the shocker. On September 9th, 2025, one day before jury selection, Bortland accepted a plea. Facing the possibility of multiple life sentences, he pled no contest to 2 counts of accessory after the fact to murder and 1 count of conspiracy to tamper with a witness. The murder counts were dropped. His sentence, 10 years in prison, with credit for roughly 4.5 years served, plus 6 years probation, putting a potential release around 2032 rather than dying in prison. A key feature of the deal is a proffer. Bortland must provide a sworn statement to prosecutors about his role. His attorneys insist the agreement does not require him to testify against Melly and that he is not a snitch. Prosecutors framed the plea differently, saying evidence was insufficient to prove Bortland was a principal shooter, though they believe they can show he helped stage the scene afterward. Online debate erupted instantly. Some branded the plea a betrayal. Others called it a rational move to avoid a life sentence, especially if it doesn't obligate testimony. Legal watchers also speculated Melly's team and Bortland's may have communicated before the deal, and Melly has since sought to change counsel, citing conflicts after the surprise plea. The retrial clock slid again to 2027. Meanwhile, Melly remains where he's been for almost 7 years, Broward County Jail. That's what makes the viral clip so combustible. His mother, Jamie Demons King, has long claimed he's been held under extremely harsh conditions, extended 24-hour lockdowns, loss of phone privileges, and no family visits. This is a defendant who, at his career peak, collaborated with Kanye West and saw his tracks rack up hundreds of millions of streams. Murder on My Mind, recorded before the killings, turned him into a star and later became a Rorschach test for the case. Supporters argue the state's case is largely circumstantial. They note what's missing: no murder weapon recovered despite extensive searches, no gunshot residue on Melly's hands or clothing, and no eyewitness who says they saw him pull a trigger. They also point to volatile testimony. One flashpoint was the appearance of Felicia Holmes, mother of Melly's ex, who prosecutors said overheard a FaceTime call shortly after the shootings. On the stand, Holmes was reluctant, frequently claimed she couldn't remember details from 2018, and said she felt threatened with perjury, raising questions about pressure and reliability. Whether you see that as fear of the state or an effort to avoid implicating Melly, the exchange underlined how contested the narrative remains. There have been substantive legal shifts, too. In October 2025, an appellate ruling limited admissible digital evidence to communications from the day of and immediately after the shootings, curbing broader phone data the state hoped to use to suggest premeditation or gang-related motive, a procedural win for the defense. In November 2025, witness tampering charges filed in 2023 were dropped due to evidentiary problems. Prosecutors insist the core case remains strong, pointing to the in-car trajectories, the seating positions, cell site data, and the alleged DM response. The defense looks at the same record and sees reasonable doubt, enough at least, to deadlock one jury. All of this heightens the due process questions pulsing under the new footage. How long can the state hold someone pre-trial without violating the right to a speedy trial and due process? At what point does detention become punishment without conviction? Florida's law now allows death penalty recommendations by non-unanimous juries. If convicted of first-degree murder, Melly faces life or death. Yet because the first jury hung, and because the evidentiary fights keep rolling, he could end up waiting more than 8 years for a second verdict. The human stakes are inescapable. 2 young men, 21 and 19, were killed. Their families have waited more than 6 years for finality. Another young man, 19 at arrest, has spent his 20s in a cell awaiting retrial. Bortland, once charged as a co-killer, accepted a deal that recasts him in law's eyes as an accessory after the fact and a witness-tampering conspirator, not a murderer. Whether his proffer affects Melly's retrial is the open question shadowing everything. So what exactly do these new jail clips prove? On their own, very little about guilt or innocence. But their impact is real. They refocus public attention on the extraordinary length and conditions of Melly's pretrial detention. They revive arguments about evidence suppression, digital privacy, and the use of lyrics, texts, and social media in violent crime prosecutions. And they remind everyone how fragile the prosecution's and defense's narratives look once they leave the courtroom and collide with public doubt. So where things stand now, first, the theory of the state remains. Shots fired from inside the Jeep by someone in the rear driver's side seat, staging to mimic a drive-by. Cell site data and seating positions aligning with that account. A disputed, "I did that" DM. Secondly, the defense posture remains. No weapon, no GSR, no eyewitness. Contested credibility on key witnesses. Digital evidence limits that weaken motive premeditation theories. And a prior hung jury suggesting reasonable doubt. Third, the Bortland plea reduced his exposure dramatically and includes a proffer, but his lawyers say no requirement to testify against Melly. Whether his statement indirectly aids the state by filling timeline gaps or strengthening staging claims won't be clear until pretrial motions surface in 2026. The retrial is set for January 2027, barring new delays. Additional suppression rulings could further shape what jurors hear. Until then, the viral footage will keep circulating, a stark reminder that behind exhibits and headlines are 3 families and an unresolved question only 12 jurors can answer. If you've been following since 2018, you know how quickly open and shut stories can bend under scrutiny, and how long justice in any direction can take.